for me, the Achilles Heel of atheism really is this, what is called epistemological fallibilism and epistemological nihilism. We'll define both of those. Epistemological fallibilism states that knowledge is out there, but that it's extremely difficult, or dare I say it, impossible to even attain true knowledge. There's many factors that go along with that. We can't have all the information all at once. We're not omniscient. We're frails as human beings. Our memories are not reliable, are not perfect.
You know, I think here when you talk about epistemological fallibilism, I think of Plato's cave, where we don't have access to everything. Again, a classic example in philosophy, if I may.
Please.
So Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave. Plato gives this parable or allegory of people who are essentially slaves in a cave, and they've lived in this cave their whole life. They can see shadows up against the wall. So they're in like this lower pit. There's an upper pit with fire, and there are people that will walk in front of the fire. So the slaves down on the lower level see these shadows. The shadows are all that they know and they think is their reality, because that's all that they can see. In the allegory of the cave, Plato talks about how one of the prisoners breaks free and is able to go to the upper level. And his eyes hurt when he sees the fire because it's light. You know, it's a much brighter light than what he's ever seen before. He struggles with it and actually goes down back to the lower pit. But eventually the prisoner escapes the cave and sees sunlight for the first time. You have this question of, when dealing with these grand questions of knowledge and what is real and how we can know it, how can we know what is real? The shadows on the cave wall are merely a fragmentation of reality. It's a small piece. To the slaves on the lower level, that's all that they know. That's all that they think is composed of reality. But really, there are these greater ideas out there if we were to think about them and become aware of them. So there's a lot of discussion in the scholarly literature about the allegory of the cave and what it all means. There's even debate over, if I recall my history of philosophy correctly, there's debate over whether Plato carries political connotations over the allegory of the cave or not. But nevertheless, for epistemological purposes, this gets into these very questions about knowledge and how we can know these things. Yeah. But sorry, back to what you were...
Yeah, no problem. That's a great intro, because if we can't wrap our hands or arms around the entirety of it, we can't understand a particular belief or concept in its totality. Can we say, do we really know it? And that's epistemological fallibilism. Charles Darwin has this quote on this very notion. He writes this to Graham, one of his friends there. So he writes, quote, "With me the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of a man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would any one trust the convictions of a monkey's mind, if there are any convictions in such a mind?" If a monkey, and it's been demonstrated that they have learned a bit of sign language in the animal studies. A gorilla and a female had a companionship, a friendship together, and they would communicate back and forth using sign language. All of a sudden, we can discover what the convictions of a monkey's mind are. Would you even trust it, is what Darwin is getting at. And if we've been developed, we're just a fortuitous accident from the lower animals, why even trust your own mind or the articulations of another, the vibrations coming out, sound waves coming out of someone's mouth that's just evolved from the lower animals? That's the whole point of epistemological fallibilism. But it gets worse. We have the problem in epistemology here, the Getter's problem, which is precisely probably the crown in the modern age of this epistemological fallibilism. That is to say, and you can look this up here yourself on Google, what the problem is in philosophy, that knowledge itself is not obtainable because we are just too feeble. Our brains are pea brains, and we just can't get there.
Yeah, so there's the concern whether we can even break outside of ourselves.
Can we get out of Plato's cave?
Right. Can you get out of the cave? Yeah. More contemporary examples, can you break out of the Matrix, right?
Yes,
taking that classic
correct.
film, right? Neo, the main character, lives in what appears to us to be the modern world, but lo and behold, he's in a matrix, and his mind is just playing a program, a trick on him. The machines, right, are having these humans in capsules. The reality is the machine world. That's the reality. So can we break ourselves out of the matrix and live in the real world? For the atheist, what you're saying is no, we can't. We can't.
According to their own literature. Why should we trust the convictions of anybody's mind?
Right.
If we can't obtain, if our pea brains are so small, we can't even obtain knowledge. Why even trust any articulation or conviction?
So this is a shift then from fallibilism into nihilism. That
Yeah, so that's the next
it's sort
step.
of an affirmative that we can't know.
Yeah, so that's the next step is, as we close this program, is epistemological nihilism. That is to say that knowledge does not exist.
When I said nihilism, I mean that we just can't know the external world. But this is nihilism about knowledge.
Knowledge itself. That knowledge itself does not exist. So the quote here comes from, again, this is a philosopher that lives in our time, ardent atheist, Colin McGinn. He writes the following, quote, "We might simply abolish the whole knowledge language game as so much error and myth. In either case, we do not worry that we are failing to grasp the nature of something real, for there is nothing real there to grasp. Knowledge has no nature, no real essence, no objective constitution, any more than unicorns do." End of quote.
Wow. That's interesting because, again, I was aware of nihilism as this idea that you can't know the external world, but he's saying you can't know.
Period.
Period.
Yeah, there is no knowledge does not exist. There's nothing even, there's no goal to even obtain. There's no cognitive ascent that we can make
Right.
to reach the end goal because it's not there.
I mean, this is sort of like a classic, I'll act like an apologist here. Well, how does he even know that you
Yeah.
can't know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just self-referentially incoherent. If he believes he has knowledge that he cannot know, right? That's a propositional statement. Humans cannot know, and he's a human. That's incoherent for him to make that claim.
Yeah, and so this is why, as we've gone through this episode on morals and meaning, ontology and epistemology, I go back to where we started from my testimony. When I came to that realization at that desk, third row from the back, third row over, and it just sat in my mind. If atheism is true, everything is false, period. I just leave you with that. And this is what I've told atheists many a times. I wish they would read their own literature, delve deeply into it, and come to that realization as the Lord made me realize. And I embraced Christ wholeheartedly after that.